The Medrash points out that Moshe Rabbeinu was more beloved to God than Noach, because in the beginning of their lives, they had the opposite description by God. In the beginning of Noach's life, he's described as Ish Tzadik Tamim Hayah B'Dorotav, and Moshe is described as the Ish Mitzri, as an Egyptian man. Yet by the end of their lives, the opposite is true. Noach, in the beginning of his life, is described as Ish Adamah, the man of the earth, and Moshe Rabbeinu is described as Lokam Navi Od B'Yisrael K'Moshe, that he spoke to God panim al panim, face to face. So the Medrash makes this comment that Noach is less beloved than Moshe. But the Meshech Chachma, Rav Meir Simcha Cohen of Dvinsk, further elaborates. He says it's interesting. What happened in their lives that had this transformation? That Noach, in the beginning of his life, is known as the Ish Tzadik, and by the end he's referred to as Ish Adamah. And Moshe, in the beginning of his life, is referred to as the Ish Mitzri, but by the end of his life is referred to as the Navi, Lokam Navi Od B'Yisrael. No Navi ever reached his level. So Meshech Achman says, if you look what happened in their lives, that's the answer to the clue. What happened in between those periods? So he says, Noach, what did he do? God told him to build a teva, build an ark, and he did that. He built himself a teva and locked him and his family up and watched as the world was destroyed. Meshech Chachma says that this is what led to his downfall. He did not go out and try to spur a tshuva movement. He did not care about the klal, the people, the masses, and therefore, by the end of his life, he's known as an Ish Adamah. He loses his status of Ish Tzadik and is later referred to as Ish Adamah. But Moshe, the opposite is true. In the beginning of his life, he's known as an Ish Mitzri, an Egyptian man, and by the end, he reaches great spiritual heights. Why, Meshech Chachma says? Because he dedicated himself to the Jewish people, always fighting for their causes, praying for their behalf, and teaching them Torah. As a result, he was elevated to high spiritual heights of being the greatest Navi in the history of the Jewish people. There's an interesting comment that's made by the Shemen HaTov, Rabbi Weinberger, was the rabbi in Borough Park. He says that usually think the opposite is true. In order to gain spiritual heights, one shouldn't, work with people. You should lock yourself in a room, in a cloise, and do self-introspection and focus on yourself. That's the way to attain spiritual growth. And Rabbi Weinberger points out the opposite seems to be true. It's Moshe Rabbeinu, the person who's always dedicated to the masses, who reaches high spiritual heights, and Noach, who literally and figuratively locks himself up away from the world, that he was lowered in his stature in his relationship with God. This is how he explains the Medrash, which gives us all an impetus to think that our own spiritual growth is tied hand in hand with how we relate to people and the masses of people in the world. Shabbat Shalom.